The Shine on CX Show with Claire Boscq, illuminating the path to exceptional customer service.
Hello, this is the Shine on CX Show, and today on my show, I am very excited about the guest that I have today right in front of me. You've got a bit of an accent that you've been sharing for the last couple of years in Jersey, haven't you?
My accent is somewhere in between. When I go back to my home country of South Africa, people say, "Are you British?" And here, people say, "Are you South African?" So I'm somewhere hovering over Egypt at the moment, if I work it out correctly.
That sounds good. So your name, as I've not introduced you, is Douglas Kruger. So very, very South African name.
It is indeed, and I'm the most English Kruger you will ever meet in your life. But yes, it is a typically Afrikaans name from South Africa.
Oh, excellent. So you and I have been introduced by a South African keynote speaker when I was in Bali, telling me that you were here in Jersey. And that's kind of one of those introductions which always makes me laugh, right? You're in Bali,
and somebody... to find out
about exactly. Which is quite interesting. So you are a keynote speaker.
I am indeed.
You're an author.
Yep.
You inspire people. You sparkle some ideas in people.
Yes, absolutely. And the basic concept is I speak to business markets and I try to pose the question, what's the gap between where you are and the current industry leaders? Could you be the best of the best? And that essentially is what I focus on. And it translates into areas like leadership, culture, innovation, and so forth. And that's what I speak on, and it keeps me out of mischief.
I like being mischief. I have to say. So you're saying being the best is not just good business. Yeah, it's a moral imperative.
It is a moral imperative, and I have a complex argument for this one, but I believe it to the core of my being. So if you take a look at the stats for the number of people raised out of abject poverty in the past 20 years, according to several sources, in fact, where the basic idea is over the past 20 years, we have dropped from around 36% poverty rates right down to, I think it's sitting around 8 or 9% of the world right now. And I think that's one of the most under-celebrated miracles of our day. I mean, it is phenomenal. And that's the power of good business, of trade, of free markets. It's what our world can do for you. But there's one condition. And the condition is you have to serve people and serve them well. So I come at this from the perspective that if you want to prosper yourself, it is eminently available to you, more so than it has ever been in the course of human history, more so than it was 30 years ago. But the condition is you have to serve and serve well. And for that reason, the conscious choice to become the best you can be, and indeed the best that there is your entrance into the game. That's why you are allowed to prosper. Those are the terms and conditions.
You have to be the best version of yourself. And serving is always, for me, it's always a very selfish isn't the right word, but it's selfless. That's the right word. Because if you're doing good for others, you feel good in yourself. Yeah. And then vice versa. It's always a good. So being the best version of yourself makes you feel good, and it'll make other people feel good. It's so simple, right?
Yes, it's both inward and outward. When you are focusing inward on being the best version of yourself, you're letting your light shine. You're not hiding it under a bushel. You are living out your fullest potential, and it is deeply rewarding. We as humans are meaning-seeking creatures. That is immensely meaningful. Takes you out of your comfort zone, gives you something that challenges you all the time. It is well worth doing. But it's also outward-looking, in the sense that if you want to become a market leader or an icon, or like ourselves as speakers, perhaps a leading thought leader, author, speaker, it depends on how you serve. And therefore, it's both inward-looking and outward-looking.
Yes. I think I hear that you have a new book coming out very soon. And this is more about beating down your door, right?
Yep.
That's where we're going. What is this all about then? Why do you want people to beat down your door?
Okay. So our journey on this one begins 10 years ago. I wrote a book called Own Your Industry, How to Position Yourself as an Expert. And that one aimed to answer the question, why are there some names that stand out in every industry? Like, why do you have such a thing as the Schwarzenegger of bodybuilding, the Nigella Lawson or Gordon Ramsay of food, the Stephen King of horror novels? Why is there always that one or two names that rise to the top? And I make the argument that when you do position yourself like that, The business comes to you, the market comes to you, you get to live at your highest level of potential, and those individuals earn exponentially more. And it's not that they're working harder, they're doing something differently. So that was step one. Step two, 10 years down the line, is to say, what distinguishes the brands who achieve that? What is the difference between 100,000 sneaker makers and Nike? And how do you do that by design? The first step in that answer, as we've just seen, is the moral imperative to serve well. But there is so much more. But yeah, and that's what the book is about. I'm putting the finishing touches to it right now. It comes out with a London publisher early next year. It's a slow and frustrating process. You finish the book and it takes half a year to a year before it appears on bookshelves. But yeah, that's the one. And it's tentatively titled Unrivaled, How to Get Them Beating Down Your Door.
And really the essence of customer experience, when you think about it, is having repeat loyal customers.
Yes.
And that's what it's all about.
Yes,
How
absolutely.
do you really share the love so much that actually people keep coming back? You don't even have to spend marketing money. And that's what drives me insane when, some organizations spend a lot of money on marketing and advertising and all that kind of things. But actually, they don't think about their repeat customers, the customers that come every day.
The people who buy from them are, by definition, humans. And social proof and delight are the primary drivers. And this tends to plague very serious-minded people, of which I am not one. Very serious-minded people will decide we have to have a business, and the business must have perfect processes. And you must have good processes, of course. Everything must run well, and AI will optimize the living daylights out of that for you these days. So there are so many tools by which you can optimize your processes. Human beings don't fall in love with an optimized process. There are other things at play there. There are things that the top brands, the top organizations do that are visceral, that are emotional, that connect with people in ways that cause the pupils to dilate, that cause the adrenaline to spike, that cause them to think, there's something special going on over there. That's different. That's what we're after.
How do you do that? So I think sometimes we think, oh yes, we can do that. I can do that. But where do you start?
Right. Well, there are several ways we can look at this one. The starting point in terms of process excellence. The best brands actually Frankenstein things from other brands. So we tend to think that an original leader...
Sorry, Frankenstein.
Take body parts and put them together.
Right,
It's exactly what it sounds like. Yeah.
Well, here we are. As a French girl, I've never heard that, but obviously in South Africa...
I will show you the body parts as we go. Right. So
me,
Frankenstein's monster, the zombie effectively put together from different body parts. We have this fallacy in our thinking that goes, innovation happens in a blaze of inspiration and it's unique. It is almost never the case for top brands. Instead, what they do is they look at the landscape globally and they say, what works for this, what works for that? And they Frankenstein the parts and put it all together. And in doing that, they come up with something that has the best of everything. And it's fun to track this one. If you take even things like the British Navy at the height of imperial power, it was a combination of all the other things that worked around the world. They just brilliantly put it all together.
Yes.
The top companies do that. So the first sort of myth we have to dispel is you must be a genius in an attic having a blaze of inspiration. You don't. You put together the best of what works. Now that done, you then need to turn your focus outward to the identity of your consumer. And that is very different to saying, how can we have a perfectly functioning process? You say, who are these people and who do they want to be? And there are some wonderful examples of this one. I like to pick on the brand Jaguar because they've done this quite well. They've had an interesting dip lately, but I think they're on their way back. Jeremy Clarkson from Top Gear, who's globally famous and the go-to name in the world of cars, I think nails the explanation of the Jaguar brand. He says, this is a person who's caddish, but in a charming sort of way. You can't entirely trust them, but you sort of like them anyway, and they drive a Jag. Now, there are so many small touches that go into the emotional impact of that brand. I'll give you some practical ways. You sit in a Jaguar, and the start-stop button will pulsate at 67 beats per minute, which is the resting heart rate of a Jaguar.
Brilliant.
And there are little touches, like you start it up and on the digital screen it draws in a single swerving line the prancing Jag, and on it goes from there. And none of those things are process. Those things are created for delight. And they create tribes of followers who buy into that at a visceral, emotional level. We don't think about that emotion often enough. And it applies whether you're building a Jaguar or selling a sandwich. What is the identity of the person who comes to you? Can you play with that identity? Can you flatter it? Can you teach them how to be the most interesting version of themselves because of you? That's what we're after.
Oh, I love it. You know, when we talk, I think so often we miss that part of that when we talk about CX strategy of the customer journey mapping, which is fantastic. You need to understand all those touch points, but actually, where do you make that moment count? Where do you connect on that emotional level? What is that little ingredient, that tiny little potions, little powder that you're going to put at that moment in time so that button pulsates at
what
60. Yes, it's just incredible, right?
Yeah, and the great challenge becomes, especially on an island like ours where we reside, the challenge becomes in an industry like financial services, for which in fact we are globally renowned and iconic. What you're selling is really a signature on a piece of paper. So how do you make the touch points come alive there? And I think this is something that most corporate companies struggle with, because what they tend to think is we have slightly different brand colors to our competitor. So our touch point is a slide that I show in a corporate presentation. And our particular hue of green is different to their particular hue of green. That's not lighting anything up. That's a whole different universe. So yes, you've absolutely nailed the question that leads into the how-to of doing this, which is the touch points. And I find the most fruitful way of looking at this is you have to walk through your process as a customer. I'll give you a practical example of that, and this is one that I share from the stage. If your goal were to have the world's best hotel room, the mistake you would make is to walk into your hotel room with a clipboard and say, right, okay, is the bed sheets folded? Check. Is the television on standby? Check. Is the hairdryer where it should be? Check, check, check. And you walk out of that room having learned nothing about it, because you are looking at it through the lens of your processes, not their experience. Now, if you want that experience, you're going to have to spend the night in your room. And you're going to have to do it preloaded with several strategic questions. Questions like, what's awful about us? What doesn't work? And by preloading those questions, you start to notice things that totally evade organograms and totally evade a checklist. For example, you will get into bed and close your eyes and find that there's a little blinking red standby light on the TV. You close your eyes and it looks like the Rio Carnival going by on the far sides of your eyelids. You thought your television was fine. It's a big problem. The curtains are shut. Lovely, that's perfect. But they don't shut entirely. There's a 1-inch gap and it lets in the morning sunlight. From 4 a.m., your international travelers, who by definition are fatigued, are going to be in this blaze of sunlight like vampires crying for darkness, right? And on it goes. I mean, there's your hairdryer. It's perfect. But it's tethered to the wall and there's no mirror there. So to use it, you have to do a gymnastics act and try and use the mirror on the far side of the world. I mean, Claire, you've experienced this.
You're talking to mystery shopper there. So, I'm kind of with you in the room, absolutely with you in that
people
room.
miss this. I mean, they think they have the best brand because it looks great on a checklist. It's not the same thing as the customer experience, as you know.
Absolutely. And I think that's those sometimes when you write it and you think it's all pretty and you've got those touch points on your walls but if you're not walk the walk, you can't talk the talk. And
yes, and your receptionist can undo it for you.
Because of it. So, sleep in the bed, go in the bathroom and look at the... that's my bed bug, I have to say. The aircon that is not being cleaned, that's one of my pet hates.
Yes.
In the bedroom, I've got to say. But
I can't figure out most of the aircon in hotels.
You can't.
It's far too complicated for me. It's like 16 buttons to just set a temperature. Eventually I just, give up and try and go to sleep.
Too complicated?
Yeah, it's way too complicated.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
And sometimes we try to make things too complicated and you lose your customers, right? And you were talking about connecting with your customers and really kind of understanding what they need.
Yes.
Is also a missing point sometimes.
So here's another interesting one on that. Your customer might actually spot stupidities built into your process that you don't. And there was such a lovely example. I was listening to an audiobook yesterday called Reset by Dan Heath. And he speaks about a patient going into a radiology department. And what they have to do is drink a formula that helps all of the x-rays to show up the bits and pieces around the body. But the problem is it takes an hour.
A whole body together.
Sorry.
Yeah,
one
next
body.
one is all body.
We're off the Frankenstein thing
All
now.
right, sorry.
So you take this formula, but it takes an hour to go through your system so that it will work well for things like the x-ray and CT scans and so forth. And it had never occurred to them that the drink is nothing medical. The person could take it themselves before they come to the hospital. So for years, they'd had this 1 hour delay that holds up the entire system. And as we know here in Jersey, a 1 hour delay in a medical system times several thousand patients, you're talking about years worth of backlog, potentially. So what they did is they said, instead of the nurse administering it, give it to people at reception, let the receptionist do it. And it was such a simple idea, but it saved them millions. The cumulative waste of time and use of resource, they calculated this to millions of dollars. Now, the funny thing about this is the nurse who administered it would never have thought of it because she thinks in terms of doing her job or his job well, and that's fine. And the receptionist would never have thought of it. The receptionist is doing their best to do their job well, but they are not able to think inter-silo because they've never had to. Your customer, however, spots those things straight away because they move from one silo to the next. So you have to be your customer. Walk through your own process and go, what's daft about this?
Absolutely, I love it. And I think the other example that actually you've done a TEDx talk not so long ago, haven't you?
It's great fun.
And I love that example, which is often used as creating a park. And let the people walk the park then do your path.
Yeah, that's another one of my little hobbies is the talk, They're Your Rules, Break Them.
Yes.
Which is about assumptions, rules, things that get in our own way that are self-imposed and can be ridiculous. I mean, certain economies, the great example I used in New Zealand, they were one of the wealthiest or highest living standards on earth in the early 50s. Then they added rule after rule, more and more regulation and legislation, until they were one of the most rule-bound nations on earth. They were the least free of the non-communist nations, and they dropped right down to almost the bottom living standards of developed nations. New government comes in, scraps the rules, they rise back up to the top three. I mean, it was that quick and that obvious. So this whole thing of getting rid of rules, and the example you give there that you mentioned is if you are laying out a park, don't place the paths where you insist people will walk. Instead, take a second, allow freedom, allow innovation, allow human beings to do what they do in the ways that they really do it. Then lay the paths there. You'll see where they actually, they've trodden the paths as they go.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's one of those most interesting things. And sometimes you're just so busy doing the processes that you forget the people.
Yes. Claire, that's why we do what we do. I mean, these folks have the best of intentions. They're running their businesses. They're stressed out. They're trying to cope with their family. Like the nurse and receptionist, they're focused on their little silo and they're doing the best they can. They rarely have the time to take their hands out of the machinery of what they're doing, zoom back and look at the picture. And that's the value in what we do. We step inside and say, over there, they're doing it like that. You could do it like that too, and this would happen for you. And that's our value. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so as a keynote speaker, I'm just going to ask you, because there's something quite exciting was going to happen. It's going to happen. It's happening. As a keynote speaker, so you've been a keynote speaker for how long?
Oh gosh, about 25 years now.
Okay.
I came out of Toastmasters very young, and I've been doing it for the last quarter century.
There's something about it, right? I think being on stage is the most fearful emotions that you can have. What's it called again?
It's the most fun you can have with your clothes on.
That's, for some of us, it is. For some, it isn't. But
it is, in fact, one of the world's leading fears.
Right,
you're dead
that's
right.
It. It's really. But as when you're on that stage, how do you feel?
It makes me come alive, and I love it. But it's hard won. I started off as a dyed-in-the-wool introvert, and I found something wonderful about a simple Toastmasters club, which was that I could go backstage and gather my thoughts in private and create the best version, the best presentation of myself and my ideas. And then it's like you step onto the stage and deliver that. And for a very shy kid to have people go, well done, and applaud, there was something wonderful about that and something addictive. And I've been doing it ever since. I absolutely love it.
So you arrived on the island a couple of years ago
Yeah,
now.
I've been here for, I think, just going on 4 years now.
Okay, and so as a keynote speaker in Jersey, there isn't that much kind of, big stages, is it?
We don't have a Toastmasters club, and on the other side of that, we don't have an actual gathering of what we call the PSA, which is Professional Speakers Association. And you and I get together and share professional insights and mutual development and so on, but we don't have an association here for it. We both belong to one in the UK. And I've found it's surprising. People do, of course, speak at events here, but it's not an industry in the same way that it is globally.
Right.
So that's something we got to tweak.
So we're addressing this gap. Yes, we are.
We're solving problems left, right, and centre.
And then we're starting a series of Speaker Factor.
Yep.
An open mic series. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Oh, yeah. So imagine the same sort of idea as X Factor. You've got terrified singers on a stage, and you and I get to sit there and be all judgy and say, no, you are terrible and you are excellent. Now, the whole idea is that we share insights that help speakers to be better at what they do. And it's valuable to us too, because the better the speaking industry as a whole is perceived to be, the better for us. So it's worth our while. Plus, it's fun. And the idea is we have a series of nights, your creation, Claire, in which we find the best speakers in Jersey, we polish them even further, and then we have a showcase to the entire island to show off the immense talent polished to its highest degree. And I mean, kudos to you. It's a great idea.
Oh, well, I think we're going to have a lot of fun, doing that. Yeah. So starting from the 1st of July, every Tuesday evening, we're going to be doing something at the sundown.
Yeah.
So come and join us.
Yeah, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Absolutely. And I think that's what most people are saying to us now we started talking about it. Oh, I need to push myself. Right? Yeah. That's the way to do it. Just push yourself.
Absolutely.
Be the best version of yourself. And share it with other people.
Yeah. Well, I always say, that phrase, feel the fear and do it anyway, it's absolutely true. It's one of the world's leading fears. And it's simply because you're separated from the herd, and people are looking at you and they're listening to you and they're evaluating your thoughts. If you weren't a little nervous, you wouldn't be normal. Everyone is. I've been doing this for 25 years and I still get nervous. In fact, a funny thing happens to me. I don't know what your tells are, but my right hand, if I get really nervous, I lose circulation in the last of my two fingers. They go numb.
Brilliant.
So when I gesture, I try and use the left hand to kind of put the right one back down. But it very quickly resolves. You get into your first story, your first illustration, it goes away.
No.
And the whole idea is we're going to have a supportive environment. So come and enjoy yourself.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So if people want to connect with you, and you've got a beautiful voice as well, hear the voice on stage in your organizations, how do they get in touch?
Any of the social media platforms. Easiest one is LinkedIn. If you'd like to drop me a direct email, it's douglas@douglaskrugerspeaker.com. My website is my name, douglaskruger.com. But I think LinkedIn is probably about the best one.
Yeah, and you've got a few books as well, you know, and so, if you're looking for ideas on innovation and creation and things like that, just download one of the books.
I recommend the audio books, and the reason for that is the physical ones are difficult to get on the island, but the audio books or the ebooks are available globally.
Perfect.
And I've read all of my own audio books, so they're all there.
Oh.
The one on rule breaking, the one on innovation, the one on how to be an expert in your industry, the whole lot.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for being on the show today, and we look forward to seeing you on stage and sharing your love and your shining your expertise and your insight with the world.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you, Claire. It's been an absolute blast. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye for now.
For more on creating exceptional customer service for your business, head to claireboscq.com. Listen to more episodes of The Shine on CX Show, wherever you get your podcasts. The Shine on CX Show.